Welcome to the model portion of the Bio 2225 lab for the male reproductive system. Thankfully, this video will be significantly shorter than the theory portion that we did on the PowerPoint. We really only have one model from the lab of the male reproductive system, and we can't see all of the various structures from the list of terms, though we can see many of them. And so just starting with the external genitalia and then moving internally, what we can see is, of course, the scrotum, which is going to be the sac-like structure in which the testis sits. And so here we see the skin of the scrotum right here. And within that, we have the testis. If I tilt this back a little bit, you can see the testis itself. Unfortunately, this model doesn't have a cross-section through the testis, so we can't see all that detail like tunica vaginalis, tunica albuginea, septa, lobules, seminiferous tubules, rete testis, efferent ductules. We can't see any of that. So that's either a good or bad thing, depending, I guess, on your perspective. But we can see a testis. We can barely make out the tunica vaginalis. I may have said we couldn't see that, but we can, if we look real carefully, you can see that there is a fluid-filled space shown in pink here, but it's not really great. But that technically, those white layers on either side of that red layer is the tunica vaginalis. And then on the surface of the testis itself, the white material on the surface of the testis itself would be the tunica albuginea. But that's very difficult to point out on a practical exam, so not likely to do that. What we can see is sitting on top and behind of the testis, again, is the epididymis. This little cap-like structure on top of the testis, that's the epididymis. All right, and we can see that. You can see that right there, again, above and behind. And leading away from the epididymis up into the spermatic cord is a single tube called the Ductus Deferens, or vas deferens. In this region, it's kind of difficult to distinguish it from the blood vessels that are also passing up through the spermatic cord up into the body cavity. So the best place to see the ductus deferens is after it passes up through the inguinal canal and emerges right up here in front of the hip bone. So that pink tube right there is the ductus deferens after it's come up through the spermatic cord, and now it then of course passes around through the side of the bladder, along the side of the bladder. To see that well, I'm going to tilt the model forward a little bit, and there again you can see from above the ductus deferens poking up from the inguinal canal and running along the side of the bladder. If I turn this around, we can see some more detailed structure. So now I'm looking at the posterior of the bladder, and I see once again the ductus deferens, this pink tube coming around along the side of the bladder, which is this muscular organ. Some people get this thing confused for the seminal vesicle. This is not. This is the ureter coming from the kidneys. So this tube is a cut ureter carrying urine from the kidneys above down into the bladder. So the ductus deferens continues on to the back side of the kidney, where it forms this enlarged portion called the ampulla. This last enlarged portion of the ductus deferens is referred to as the ampulla. Okay, now right below the ampulla, all this structure right here, that's a seminal vesicle. We're seeing the same thing on the opposite side, except the ampulla has been sectioned so you can see the interior of it, and the seminal vesicle has been sectioned so you can see the interior of it. But remember, the seminal vesicle on the back side of the bladder has a tube that then fuses with the ductus deferens, and from that point on it's going to be referred to as the ejaculatory duct. Now to see this, we have to essentially pull this model up off of its stand, up off of the stand, which is sometimes difficult to do. So it'll probably fall apart as I do this. So let me get out of the field of view for a moment. And so I can bring it back to view here. So to show you where we were in this region, right? And I want to pull it apart so we can do essentially what amounts to a sagittal section through this part of the body. And when we do a sagittal section, this is perhaps the most revealing portion of the model. Let me get us set up here. So just to reiterate where we were, we had the ampulla of the ductus deferens, the seminal vesicle here. They fuse together and they form a very short tube which is hidden here. You just see the very end of this tube popping out. That's the ejaculatory duct. The ejaculatory duct. It disappears underneath, but it is continuous with the ampulla and the seminal vesicle. The ejaculatory duct, remember, is passing through the prostate gland, which is shown as this dark brown structure here. All of this is the prostate gland that sits beneath the urinary bladder. And so remember, what comes out of the urinary bladder is the urethra. And initially the urethra is called the prostatic urethra because it exits immediately into the prostate gland which surrounds it. And so this tube here represents the ejaculatory duct coming from the ductus deferens and seminal vesicle, and it's going to empty into the prostatic urethra. As we continue on down, the prostatic urethra turns into the membranous urethra, this short region right here. And then once we enter the penis, of course, we have the penile urethra, which is going to carry the semen out of the body. If we look at the other side of this sagittal section, the other part of this sagittal section, we'll see something that wasn't quite clear. No, we don't see it. So I thought there was something on the other side that wasn't on this side, but it's not there. What's missing, of course, is the Bobo urethral gland. What I'm looking for is the Bobo urethral gland, which is actually, there it is, right there. I didn't want to forget that. So here, 27, there's the Bobo urethral gland, the third of the three accessory glands. So again, seminal vesicle on the back side of the bladder, prostate gland beneath the bladder, and then the Bobo urethral gland will be on each side. And it also dumps its clear lubricant fluid into the membranous urethra. And from that point on, again, we call it the penile urethra. As far as the penis itself goes, we don't have too much to see. Again, we see the shaft of the penis and the tip of the penis, which is the glans penis. This is a circumcised penis, and so we don't have much of a prepuce. The prepuce that we do have is shown as 28 here, the foreskin. But in an uncircumcised penis, the prepuce would cover the entire glans. We do have the ability to look at a cross-section through the penis, and by looking at a cross-section, we'll be able to see the three cylinders of erectile tissue. And so we can do that here. I apologize for the metal spokes sticking out, but there's your cross-section through the penis. And so what we see is we have two dorsal cylinders on top. And those two dorsal cylinders are called the corpora cavernosa, and they are separated by a septum. And then the ventral cylinder of tissue, again, is the corpus spongiosum, and notice right at the center of the corpus spongiosum you have the penile urethra. All right, and believe it or not, that's it for the models of the male reproductive system. The rest of the structures, such as the rete testis and seminiferous tubules and so on, we will have to accomplish with diagrams. Okay, so that's it for today. Next week we will do the female reproductive system. Until then, stay safe.